turned up. Let's go.
What is up, you guys? I'm Charmx, and today I'm going to be reacting to Film Theory, the true story of the Conjuring horror movies, what really happened by the film theorists. Now, I know a lot of, horror movies, or a portion of horror movies are actually based off of some kind of truth. But then again, after they go through writing and whatnot, they get exaggerated to make it more interesting. That's why, every movie compared to a book, the movie is a little bit more exaggerated. And it's changed up just because it's made to be more entertaining, right? So obviously, with most horror movies where there's any truth, it's been exaggerated like crazy. So I guess we're gonna find out the truth behind the Conjuring horror movies. But anyway, with that being said, the original link's in the description. Make sure you guys go subscribe to the Film Theorist. Without any further ado, let's begin. Oh boy, we're starting off with the scares already. Oh, this intro. Meme reveal.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show that believes we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Well, that. And demonetization! Now, as anyone who's ever watched me play a horror game can tell you, I'm a pretty big scaredy cat. But here's the thing, I'll get startled.
That's how I am. I get startled really easily in video games and in life. Just in general.
For a moment, but it's pretty rare that horror movies stick with me and keep me from getting sleep at night because 99% of the time I can just rationalize that it's a movie.
Anyone who watches horror movies at night before bed is crazy.
Sure, great white sharks, or genetically mutated great white sharks, or prehistoric super great white sharks are scary in the moment, but their movies are works of complete fiction. And while you certainly got some slasher movies based on real-life serial killers, I deal with psychotic people all the time. My job is on the internet after all. Badoom.
I guess we're roasted. Matt's roasting everyone.
Ching. No, what's really unnerving to me is that little voice in the back of your head that says that supernatural phenomena might actually be true, which is why the Conjuring movies tend to be so terrifying. Because not only are these films well-shot psychological horror pieces, but because they claim to be retelling.
Oh yeah, based on the true story. Pfft. The little bit might be true, right? But then it's just been exaggerated so much.
Of real events. If you're not familiar, the Conjuring universe includes 2 main series titles about haunted houses and demonic possessions, 2 Annabelle movies about a doll that's haunted because...
I haven't seen all of them. I've seen I think a portion, but I haven't seen all of them.
I mean, just look at the thing. And now The Nun, which is about a demonic nun whose eyes seem to indicate an advanced case of jaundice. Well, the truth about the Annabelle movie should be taken with a grain of salt, and The Nun should be taken with, like, a kilo of salt.
Why so
salty?
Conjuring and its sequel are actually pretty interesting. You see, Ed and Lorraine Warren, the main characters, are the real names of the real ghost hunters who claim these are real cases where these things really happened. And that got me thinking about 2 things.
Oh, so I guess it was kind of based off of a real event then, right?
Number 1, that I don't have nearly enough holy water in my house. And number 2, just how true are these ghost stories? I mean, these movies are creepy as all...
Oh yeah, I remember this.
Get out. And you're
I
telling
remember
me
this.
They're real? How worried do I actually need to be? Are they real insofar as Ed and Lorraine claim these to be true stories, or are they actually supported by real evidence? Are they true stories, or are they true stories? So today, not only do I want to explore how real...
Oh my goodness, that was creepy.
...gets, but also how true a story needs to be for it to claim that it's based on a true story. So, turn off the lights. And don't turn around to see that shadow crawl.
Matt, no, do not, no, Matt, no. La 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 la. No, nope. There. I didn't really hear what Matt was saying, but he was trying to scare me, so good thing I didn't hear it.
New England, 1970s. The Perrin family moves into a nondescript farmhouse, only to start experiencing strange noises and smells.
What is this face over here? That's creepy. I don't like that.
Carolyn, the mother, reports that she is being attacked by some sort of female demon. Enter Ed and Lorraine Warren, ghost hunters, who determine the evil presence to be a witch named Bathsheba, an old crone who once lived in the house,
Speaking of witches, this is a kind of a side note, but there was actually, like, this is real. There's actually a bunch of them in, I think it was, New York? Trying to put a curse on was it Kavanaugh, whatever his name is? Like, there's video of it. They're all sitting doing their spells and stuff.
sacrificed her week-old child to the devil and then killed herself in 1863. Carolyn becomes possessed by Bathsheba, the Warrens perform an exorcism, and the spirit is driven out.
This is the story of the first Conjuring, but how much of that is real? Well, for starters, Ed and Lorraine Warren were really the top demonologist and medium duo of the era. Can't really imagine how many people were actively competing with them for that title, but regardless, they had a laundry list of famous paranormal investigations under their belts.
I wonder how they got into that, right? Because it's not like they had lots of movies to go around watching to get them interested in that kind of topic.
Including ones that inspired movies not in the Conjuring franchise, like the Amityville Horror and A Haunting in Connecticut. One of those cases was indeed a spirit named Bathsheba haunting the Perron family, whose names weren't changed for the film. In interviews, Andrea Perron, the oldest child, did say that the movie captured the essence of what they were going through.
Well, it had to have been exaggerated, I'm sure.
She's been upfront about witnessing her mother's exorcism and has gone on record to say,
I thought I was going to pass out. My mother began to speak a language not of this world, in a voice not her own. Her chair levitated, and she was thrown across the room. Whoever the spirit was, she perceived herself to be a mistress of this house, and she resented the competition my mother posed for that position.
The father, Roger, had similar things to say.
Back in my day, I would plant potatoes in the field. It's the kind of voice I imagine he would have.
Was possessed. Her entire body was distorted, and it lasted several hours until they demonized her.
Now, of course, those are just interviews. It's easy enough for people to lie. The Bathsheba bit, on the other hand, gives us something to work with. According to Andrea Perron,
Mrs. Warren came into the house knowing nothing. She stepped into the kitchen and said,
What have I got?
I feel a dark presence, and her name is Bathsheba.
this is where fact and fiction get tough to distinguish. I did
Is this where they start twisting, reality?
some more digging, and in the area where the Perron family lived, there definitely was a woman named Bathsheba Sherman who lived there in the mid-19th century. But it doesn't appear that she lived in the same house as the Perrons, and there's definitely no hard evidence that she was a witch. It appears that 3 out of her 4 children died young, but this was also a time when agitated babies were prescribed gin and opium to help them calm down, so suffice it to say that losing a few kids in the 1800s wasn't exactly proof of witchcraft. Apparently, the rumors of
Yeah, no, back then, you're very, very lucky if you make it through childhood alive. I don't know if there were any vaccines back then, so that's a thing, but like medically, it wasn't up to what we have now, right? So I think the chances of you surviving childhood were really low.
Bathsheba's witchcraft started when an infant mysteriously died in her care, killed by a large sewing needle that was impaled into the base of the skull. But there are no
What?
records of any charges against Bathsheba that actually stuck. It's unclear
A sewing needle? Did she? I don't. Whatever.
how seriously people took these rumors, considering she was buried in the town cemetery next to the graves of her children, which doesn't seem like something a Christian community would do for someone who is thought to be a Satanist. That said, for Lorraine Warren to walk into the house and come up with the name Bathsheba is interesting and awfully specific.
Yeah, that's odd. But then again, stranger things have happened. Like out of nowhere, my wife left me and took the kids.
Until you consider that the Warrens were brought onto the case in the first place by a local paranormal group, meaning that they very well could have been fed the local legend before
Oh yeah, that probably makes sense if they were fed it. Yeah, of course that makes sense.
meeting the
Easily.
Perrons. So overall, the people, the place, and the details of the haunting appear to be real, even if the actual
What year was this, in the 80s or the 70s? I forget.
ghosts and witches might not be. You would expect the sequels and spin-offs of The Conjuring to have much less basis in real events, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The Conjuring 2 is based off the Enfield poltergeist case in England in the 1970s, which again, the Warrens investigated. In this one, Janet Hodgson, the second oldest of 4 children,
Oh, okay, yeah. I saw this one in theaters. This one scared the crap out of me. I'm pretty sure this is the one where I almost had like a heart attack. It was so freaking scary. My friend was like right beside me. I think this is the movie, because I've seen a lot of horror movies in theaters, so I think this is the right one. But there's one part in it where I was like, ah! And I like slap my friend almost.
Finds herself possessed by the spirit of an
I remember.
man,
Oh my
Bill
goodness.
Wilkins, who states that he wants to reclaim his home.
Janet, are you alright?
My name is
Jeff.
Bill Wilkins.
My name's Jeff.
And I'm 72 years old.
And unlike in the first Conjuring, that isn't just a scene from the movie, but real life. The BBC made a documentary about the alleged haunting, and investigators have lots of audio of 11-year-old Janet Hodgson sounding more like a 100-year-old coal miner who smokes like a chimney.
Is anybody there?
Is this real footage?
No.
Oh, it is real footage. I didn't even read that.
No.
It takes a while, but listen long enough, and she eventually identifies herself as an old man named Bill Wilkins, who died of a brain hemorrhage in a very specific chair in the house.
I had an hemorrhage, and I fell asleep, and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs.
This is a nice story made up by the kid, right? Well, maybe, until you consider that
That's
Bill
creepy.
Wilkins' son Terry listened to the recordings and identified the voice as sounding very much like his father.
What if they were all in on it to get a movie made about it?
And if that wasn't creepy enough, the events that caused the Warrens to get involved in the first place are pretty irrefutable. In both the movie and in real life, a policewoman gets called to the Hodgson home in the 70s and says that she saw chairs sliding across the floor. Most of the time in these ghost stories, it's the family who has something to gain by lying. It's hard to say how a third-party police officer called in to investigate would benefit from doing something like that.
The police officer would get fame and maybe a cut of the money from the movie.
Over a period of the next 18 months, more than 30 people, including neighbors, psychic researchers, and
30 people, only witnesses?
journalists, said that they saw heavy furniture moving on its own accord and objects being thrown across.
Move out. Move out. Why would you live there? As soon as something like that starts happening, it's like, all right, pack up, we're leaving. We're leaving. We're going to a motel until we can find an apartment. Frig it. No, there's no way.
Across the room. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm just gonna turn all the lights on in the house and grab myself a crucifix or 5. And that's gonna be a big heaping helping a nope. Nope, 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 nope. When it comes to Annabelle and Annabelle creation, these movies are based on a real spooky doll that the Warrens investigated before the events of the Conjuring movies.
Oh, is that the one that's like, that's actual real and it's locked up in a box somewhere? I know there's an actual doll that's haunted. Or it's like possessed or something. And it moves around in a cage. But every now and then, its position will change and stuff. It might be based off of that, I don't know.
According to The Demonologist, a book that chronicled cases taken by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Annabelle doll had been a gift, but began to move on its own. Leave written notes, and move objects around the room. The doll itself is even under glass at the Warrens Occult Museum in
Yeah, I think that is the one. That is the one. Oh my goodness, yeah. Yeah, like, no, I'm not. Get out of here, now.
Connecticut still haunts to this very day. Multiple visitors who've broken the warning of don't touch the glass and taunted the doll have had horrific traffic accidents happen to them as they drive home. But don't worry, that draft you feel going up your spine isn't from the doll. It's from the cold hard rejection the local news guy gets when he asks his co-anchor to go see the doll with him.
Maybe next time you can go to the museum with me and we can,
No.
No?
Absolutely not.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Sure.
There isn't enough money in the world.
That is one cold shoulder. Now, it's pretty clear that the
Shot down. I mean, that would be a really weird place to go on a date. Could you imagine that your first date's at a haunted freaking... Yeah, no.
one thing all these movies have in common is that the way that their stories resolve themselves isn't quite reality. The parents...
Yeah, this is where... Because... It's a filmmaker, right? It's a movie. Real life endings, for the most part, aren't as happy as how they are in movies. So, you know, they gotta twist it to make it more happy of an ending or to have more of a conclusion, kind of.
apparently continue to live in their farmhouse with spirits in the basement for over a decade. Janet's possession by Bill Wilkins was investigated countless times, with the ultimate conclusion being that the whole Enfield poltergeist was a combination of some simple furniture pranks and girls talented in ventriloquism.
Just because this case was fake doesn't mean that all cases are, though. I mean, witches are still a thing as shown in New York, and if what they did didn't work, they would have stopped hundreds of years ago.
Real life doesn't wrap up into neat little packages the way the movies do, but the facts of the cases, the people involved, and the events described, even if they were hoaxes, are all mostly what happened. So at this point, here's my question. Is that enough to call these true stories? I mean, we
partially true stories.
Have explicit laws in place that outright prevent false advertising. Is there a threshold for how much truth has to be in a work of fiction before you can call it true, or at the very least based on a true story? Well, let's consider a couple of cases.
Please consider the phone.
Another horror movie, The Strangers, also claimed to be inspired by true events. The story is about 3 masked home intruders who show up at a house and proceed to torture the family there for no reason. And what was the truth behind that one? That the screenwriter once got a knock on his door from some strangers who were committing robberies in the neighborhood.
That's based off a true story. Okay, that's funny. That's funny.
That's it. And then there's the opening text from The Blair Witch Project and Fargo, 2 movies that flat out state that the events that you're about to see are either real or recreations of what really happened. So what were the true stories behind both of those 2 films? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nada, zip, bupkiss.
Nothing.
Stories were entirely made up. So how are movies able to get away with this? Well, false advertising statutes in the US are regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, but most of those rules are predicated on ensuring that products don't make misleading health claims or misrepresent what the consumer is going to tangibly receive. Movies don't apply to either of those.
Okay, so I'm filming this afterwards. And I didn't really mention this in it, but yeah, I was under the impression that the majority of horror movies, although, yes, I don't really think most of them are real, but I thought the ones that are supposedly based off a true story have some kind of truth to them. Maybe not much, but at least something that's true, right? And, you know, with the Conjuring and whatnot, it seems to be some kind of truth, but then again, with like the Blair Witch one, which says there's, you know, based on true story or whatever, it's not at all. So yeah, I'm surprised that they can get away with saying, you know, it's based off a true story when it isn't.
So anyway, movies can say they're true, completely lie, and be ignored by the law. But here's the twist. Movies that are only partially true are actually much more vulnerable to lawsuits. This is mostly because fictional characters and their fictional families can't sue you, but the real people you portray in your film just might.
So by that logic, it's better for movies studios to lie and just make up something and claim it as being based off of the real story.
Even the Conjuring franchise has gotten into some hot legal water, not because of how true the movies were or weren't, but because the author of The Demonologist...
What's just a freaking creepy editing? Come on now, Matt. I can't stand it. It's too early to be dealing with this creepy stuff.
Gerald Brittle owned the rights to the Warren stories. He sued Warner Brothers for nearly $1 billion, citing copyright infringement. So how did WB get out of the lawsuit? By claiming fair use of the plots, given that they were based on historical fact. In other words, Warner Brothers' legal case rested on the stories of ghosts, possessions, and haunted dolls to be so true that they could not legally be copyrighted. And best of all, they won, which tells us two pretty...
Like the doll thing, I definitely believe is real. Like you don't want to mess with that. Like even was it Post Malone doing something like that recently? I think he was actually in that haunted place with that haunted museum, and he was in the news. And after that, like a whole bunch of horrible things started happening to him. I think he was in there, or he might have been in another haunted museum or something.
Shocking things. First, that legally you're in a better position to make up total BS and then call it the truth in your marketing than you are to just base your story on true events and run the risk of someone suing you. And 2, in the eyes of the criminal justice system, ghosts, witches, and demonic possessions are all in the realm of historical fact.
Well, I mean, witches definitely are. Just the other day, I think it was New York, it was somewhere, there was like a bunch of them trying to put a curse on I think it was Kavanaugh, the guy who just got in. And that's real. You can go look that up, that they were doing that. So, I mean, that's fact.
But hey, that's just a theory. A spooky theory.
Is Matt going into spooky movies until Halloween? Yeah, I'm not really sure what to say. Like, obviously, most of the stories in that are exaggerated and or twisted if they are based off of like real events, just because it's for the movies, it has to be entertaining. Because I always wondered, you know, how true are the stories that the movies are based off of, and apparently some of them just say that and they aren't true at all. But I mean, some things definitely are real, I just don't think that they're made into movie. Like, you know, exorcisms, they're actually on the rise right now. I think they've had the most, I don't know if ever, in the last couple years, like, they're on the rise. But anyway, I like this. I think the editing was pretty good. There is a little bit too creepy at times. A little bit too creepy at times. But then again, I'm also a big chicken. And I don't like the creepy editing all that much. However, like, it's like horror movies. I like them, but I don't like them. I like them because when you get the fright, you get the adrenaline, right? But I don't like them because I don't like getting scared. So it's a double-edged sword, kind of. But, anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, possibly share with a friend. If you did, subscribe to the family. Also, make sure you guys go subscribe to The Film Theorist. And, yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Boop!